One, two, three. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Michelle.
I'm here with Nicole Cannon, founder and principal of NCA Studio, a Los Angeles-based architecture firm known for creating thoughtful, high-value spaces that bring people together. With a background that includes award-winning work at firms like Marmol Radziner and Clive Wilkinson Architects, Nicole launched her own practice to focus on design that's both people-centered and pragmatically creative. Her work spans restaurants, community spaces, workplaces, and more, always rooted in craft, collaboration, and a deep understanding of how architecture can enhance everyday life. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So I have never met Nicole before. I don't think. So this is almost like, typically I will know a person that I'm interviewing, so I will have met. So this is like almost like a blind date, except that, there's no such thing as a blind date with the internet anymore. You probably have seen some picture of them or you've been on social media with them or something, but we'll go back to that, which I was like trying to think, when was the last time I was on a blind date? And it was in high school. So that was the last time I was on a blind date.
It's probably the same for me as well. So it's nice that we can do this at this stage in our lives. Yes.
And I didn't, I never went on any dating apps or anything like that, but or went out with anybody, So anyway, it's nice to, and then, Jefferson and Sue kind of recommended that you be on, and I'm doing this series on the wildfires and in LA, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted Nicole to come on. So how's your day been?
It's been great. I mean, I was just on vacation last week, so this week has been super busy, but honestly full of good stuff. And it's Friday, so I'm ready for the weekend.
And you had a longtime employee leave,
yes.
And then you're interviewing people.
Yes. I think,
you will be interviewing people.
Exactly. I mean, something that's been a real gift for us is that a lot of my employees they stay for many years. And so, but then that's also because they're so super valuable to me that when they leave, and also kind of part of a family. It's definitely a mixed feeling of like happy they're moving on to something great, and also a little sad about them leaving. But yeah, so I guess that means that we're hiring.
You're hiring.
Qualified.
What level would you like? What kind of level, or what is the position, and where is the office, and what do you work on?
Yeah, so it's really like 5+ years. And so I think that depending on the person and their skill set, like some people are a great fit depending on what they do. But what we really work on mainly is we do a lot of hospitality. We work on community centers. We work on retail and office spaces. So what I'm passionate about is like kind of places that bring people together and looking at kind of like spaces that create community, right? And so the office is down in the Arts District. We are 6 people, so we're a small office, but we also share the office with another woman-owned architecture firm. So it's actually kind of like a nice little family here that we can share and collaborate. That's Una Ryan. I don't know if you've ever met Una.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've known Una for probably like 20 some years now. I mean, maybe not quite that long, but quite a while. So when we were like 6 or 7 years ago, both looking for office space, we just decided to like try it out, separate sides of the office, but we found this great old building in the Arts District. You can kind of see these old, big heavy timber, the brick and the timber and lots of light, and it's been fabulous. So, and we've been here for probably almost 7 years now. So, and since then, I think probably about 65% of our work is in hospitality, specifically restaurants in the Los Angeles area, which is a really, really fun sector, just because, there's a lot of creative energy. It's really fast paced, like it's very challenging, but at the same time, really rewarding. And then also, fingers crossed the food is good. Usually it is. that you actually get to see like all these amazing places. Like, we worked on a restaurant called Sappy's here in LA. It's by the same owners as Bestia and Bevel. And, I drive by that. It's near my house. I drive by it every day. And it's full. And to be able to see a place I worked on and just full of people who are enjoying it and loving it and, enjoying the food and the experience. It's so rewarding. It's so exciting. And plus,
Yeah.
there's some perks, there's some free food, there's things like that. So plus we get to work with like
I've been
creative
to
people.
Una's restaurant, the one in Pasadena.
Oh, Agnes. Yeah. That one's really
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Really
I was
beautiful.
there. I
So-
don't know whether you went to the one when she was, when Low End Windows was,
Mm-mm.
they did kind of like a little continuing ed there. And then we had dinner there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In kind of like the main space there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was like a few years ago or whatever. I
Yeah.
go to, it's like I really do like, I mean, when we were living in Venice Beach, well, my favorite restaurant in Venice Beach at the time was Joe's Restaurant. That was like the best.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only Michelin star restaurant that I've ever I think they're Michelin.
Well,
I think they're Michelin. Does he have? I don't even know whether he has any. But I mean, that was like literally like just around the block from where we lived, and it was there on Abbot Kinney, and I absolutely loved that place. And you could even go there for lunch, and it was totally reasonably priced. Like, I mean, even I could have. But there were just so many great restaurants in that area. And even along Main Street, there were just some great restaurants. So really, it's like, I just have not gone to that many. Like, I don't really go to that many restaurants in San Diego or anywhere else because I just always am. I kind of like, that's like my standard. And so I'm like laughing. I'm like, I'm spoiled. Like I would never go to like a restaurant. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find a restaurant, and people are like, oh, I'm like, I don't know.
yeah. Well, I mean, I must say I've been very lucky. We have had several Michelin star clients and but I am spoiled because my expectations when I go out in Los Angeles are very high. So I'm kind of like every place I go, because I mean, I'm not only enjoying the food, but I'm also looking at what did they do with the lighting? What did they do with that material? What did they do with the acoustics? And so it definitely it has there's a framework which I look at everything. So, well, a good thing is that we have a lot of great restaurants, but in LA, but a lot of them don't quite meet up to I think the level that they could, right? And that's where they need to work with the right people or have the right attitude or have the right process to get there. So
yeah, or any of I mean, from like the 80s or 90s, right, like Kate Manalini or any of the ones that were down in Venice Beach that were kind of like architecturally interesting and we're kind of like, okay, here's this real interesting space. And then I also like the building that La Brea Bakery used to be in, and now it's like now it's been a couple other restaurants. Which one?
Yeah, I don't know what it's. I mean, I'm not sure what's there now. I mean, just down the street from there is Republique, which is amazing, and they're actually one of our clients as well.
And did you do that one?
No, well, we're working out with them on like an outdoor dining space, which has been. I mean, we just got through plan check. It's been very slow with all the alfresco changes and all that kind of stuff with the city, but I'm super excited. I mean, so Walter's a really interesting guy. They do amazing food and he's super creative. So he's been a fun client to work with.
Yeah. And then and also to say the truth, one of my roommates in college actually worked for this. There was this place in downtown Claremont. I don't know how old you are, but anyway, it was called First Street.
I don't think I've been to downtown Claremont though.
Yeah, yeah. So it was
No,
First
I don't
Street.
think I've been
Well,
there. No.
because I went to Cal Poly Pomona, so it's like I lived in Claremont. So yeah,
Mhm.
so it was First Street, and it was this great place. She was a pastry chef there, but then she went on to work for Wolfgang Puck at Postrio in San Francisco. And then
Mm-hmm.
so meanwhile, I would have like these pastries in our refrigerator because she'd just bring them home from the restaurant. And so people would come over, and I'm like, "Oh, do you want anything to eat?" I said, "Do you want any dessert?" And they're like, "What type of dessert do you have?" And I'm like, "Oh, chocolate ganache cake, or like I do like apple tart with caramel sauce." They're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." And then
I,
I actually like would help, like if somebody wasn't there or whatever. She's like, "Oh, do you want to come in and help?" And I'm a pretty good cook, but I mean, some of it is just so it's like physically draining. And now she wants to she's retired from UC Berkeley because she just she left the pastry chef industry, and because she had to make money. But because so she was so now she like wants to get into something else. And I'm like, why don't you just go back and be a pastry chef? She's like, oh, I just want to do something. That I'm like, well, oh, she did my wedding cake, like back in the day. And then everybody's like, oh my
yeah.
God, this is like the best wedding cake that I've ever tasted. And I'm like, yeah, because it's all from scratch. It didn't have to be like a huge cake. It was like, I mean, it was, but and had like white chocolate collars on it, and fresh flowers. I mean, this is like 1991. Like people, they typically didn't have buttercream frosting on their cake.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like pastries have made an entire evolution since then. Like one of our clients was for the Bon Temps restaurant, and the chef there was Lincoln Carson. And so he was a James Beard Award winner for his pastries. And I mean, like, I would be so excited every time he was trying out new recipes and new tweaks. And not only like on like the food level, but then like me kind of nerding out with like the technical side of it, be like, oh, I got this new oven, like can do this. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
like, oh wait,
yeah. Which
that's the
right,
new
you have
poundy
to
oven.
if you're doing restaurants, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause there's all
Yeah.
these different kinds of equipment that, you have to bake a certain thing a certain way, and, at least understand the basics of how they work with the chefs. Cause it really does impact on their menu and how the workflow goes and everything. So it's
Mhm.
really, for me, it's super interesting. Probably not
Yeah.
for everybody, but but I also love to cook. So like, I go home and for fun, I cook, right? So it's like, I never am cooking at that level, but like, when I'm learning at work, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try that thing at home over here. And
I'm not like cooking. Yeah, I might do like one thing from scratch in a holiday meal or something like that, but I'm definitely not. I'm not like, I mean, and typically I'm not, I've never just heated up food. I mean, I've never been that type of a person. I typically always, I mean, people are kind of laughing like if they're making something out of out of a box. It's like that's cooking from scratch. I'm like, not really, not in my life.
yeah, I know. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
So I
all
am,
about,
I am like, yeah, yeah. And I'm not, it's not like I'm pick like really, and then people say, oh, do you care about where you're going? I'm like, no, because if it's not, um, if it's not like for dinner at a really nice place, I really could care less. I could really care less. Like, I
yeah,
mean, I can go to Chipotle and be totally happy with a Chipotle burrito, I mean, it's like if I'm not going to go like that. And then if I am going to go someplace that's nice, it's like I want it to be something that is super unique that I've never had anywhere. I don't want to go just because like,
yeah,
oh, I'm going to have a Caesar salad with chicken or like some other type of salad or anything with kale. God, you have kale and everything now, which is fine. Like kale's fine, but it's like I don't, or the other day we went somewhere and the place was actually nice. I went and met a girlfriend, and and I was like, oh, I actually like this restaurant because um a lot of times like the sense of scale or like
yeah,
walking into a restaurant, right? It's like I kind of walk and you want it to be like a sense of scale that you feel comfortable walking into, that it's not this thing where all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I just walked in, I'm by myself, I'm like looking around, it's like you kind of want
yeah,
I
yeah.
I think personally that you want to, and I could actually, and it was funny because I don't think I've ever walked into a restaurant like and done this where I was actually able to see her like 50, at least 50 or 60 feet away, which I don't think I've ever walked into a restaurant and like immediately seen somebody 50 or 60 up, but it was like light enough in there that I could like see and but again, it's like they were like, oh, I just wanted a salad or something. And I just, I said like, oh, what about that? Like, oh, well, we don't have baby kale. We just have other kale. And we don't think it's as good if we do it with like kale rather than baby kale. And I'm like, kale and all this other stuff salad. It's like, does it make a difference? It's like kale is
Yeah.
kale.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is like the environment is honestly, it's just as important as the food is, right? Like, because I think like you can have that same kale salad in one location, or you can have it at your kitchen at home. Be like, oh, this is good. You put it in a location that you're like, oh, I feel comfortable here. I feel like whether it's, depending on the mood, like whether it's a bright and light and, like noisy place or a little cozy place, like depending on what you're going for, like that is like half of the experience, I mean, like, if you have really bad food, like, that's a different story, but like having a place that actually like brings out this kind of emotion in you and actually kind of you, or maybe even you can choose like when you go in there, oh, I want to go into the little cozy corner over here, or I want to be in the bar, which is really lively, and just like a sea of tables that like you can see one person because like there's nobody else there, and then they have problems with the food, and it's like that's no fun. That's not an experience. Like everybody's looking for an experience now, and then that's how you have to like really figure out how you can tailor the space to like evoke certain emotions and responses and feelings and types of ways people get together, right? And so it's hard. Like if there's nobody in there, it's no matter what, it's going to be kind of lonely. but I do think that there's so many ways you can actually use like materials and light to like make it unique and make no matter what you feel good there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this one, it was simply just, it was the scale. The scale was more of a scale like Joe's. And so as soon as I went in there, I'm like, I feel totally comfortable here. And even we were in the back. And so then I got to see everything, right? I like to be able to see, I like to people watch. I don't like to sit at the bar. I don't like to sit at the bar. And then I don't like bar stools. And I know a lot of people love bar stools and they kind of laugh and they're like, but you're tall. And I'm like, yeah, I can't stand bar stools. I want to be able to sit I don't like being like, I like my feet on the floor. That's just, I said, that's just me. I said, there's a ton of people that they like being at the bar. It's like, I don't like being at a bar. I don't like to be, I think also too, I'm probably a romantic. I think that's part of the thing is that like under all of this thing, it's like I do like romance in a restaurant, and that might just be from I don't know. I always think of it as being kind of like this romantic experience, and that's why I typically go to a restaurant. Otherwise, obviously I was there with my girlfriend, but not my girlfriend, but but yeah, I don't.
But you
have
want
a
that
girlfriend.
experience. It's like you want like you want it either to be cozy or you want it to be like, or maybe it's like a gathering of a lot of people. But it's like sitting at the bar is very unique, and a lot of people love that. But it's definitely not for everybody. And it's like also most bar stools, you don't want to sit there for more than like maybe 30 minutes. Like they don't have a back. Like there's a lot of things you can do, and that's also part of the design, depending on where you are. What can you do that actually encourages people to stay there versus do you want people to cycle through? And that fits into all of it, the materials, the chair selection, so I'm sure there's bars out there that you would feel totally comfortable in, but just not like the standard bar stool, right?
I always would go for a booth or like a table, or the other thing is if the tables are so small that there isn't room for the food. That's another thing.
Yeah, that drives me crazy. Especially when everything's small plates, right? And they're like, here's your 20 plates on a 2-inch table.
Yeah. And I like the way the food looks, and I like the atmosphere, and people will kind of laugh because one of my friends, she doesn't listen to this podcast, but she would, and she's not an architect, which is one of the reasons why she doesn't listen to the podcast. Not that people that aren't architects can't listen to the podcast, but she was kind of like, people are saying, oh, why do you want to go out for a glass of wine? Like, you can just have a glass of wine at my house. I'm like, I don't want to have a glass of wine at your house. It's like, I don't like, if I go out for a glass of wine, it's, it's either for a social event that there's some type of cocktail party or something that I'm going to have a glass of wine. I said, or I'm just going to go out with friends and I just want to sit there with a glass of wine. I said, but it's not really the wine. The wine could be anything. It's having the glass, and then having just being in, a good atmosphere. Either there is a beautiful view, on the water or whatever. Like one of the there's an Il Fornaio here, and people are always laughing. They're like, why do you always want to go to Il Fornaio? I said, because I said, it is kind of like a dining room, and it's the one in Coronado. They'll be like, oh, do you want to go in the one in Del Mar? I'm like, no, I don't really like the one in Del Mar. I like the one in Coronado. The windows are really tall, and you can just see out on to the city. And and to me, it's just, I don't know, it's just like this great experience. And you don't always, even though there are other people around, it's like I don't really notice them like as much as there's probably more room in between the tables, and then the view is out, so you're like not, you can't like listen to, or maybe I don't know, maybe the music is high enough you can't hear it. And again, the ceilings are high and it's lit. Of course, now, right, I'm older, so it's like I'll look at the menu, I can't read it, because it's too dark. So I'm getting my phone out, and like trying to like see things, or putting on glass, or I don't have glasses, and then I'm like, okay, what is there, like, and I'm asking like, what is, I can't even read it, so it's like light gray font on white paper. So it's like,
they're like, okay, they have to work for this. Okay, do they want to eat? And then they give you 3 words like, meat, vegetable, sauce. Like, what?
What's your favorite food? What's your favorite food? And then we'll go on to the questions. But what do you think? What is your favorite food? Or what do you think is like kind of like the nouveau food of the...
That's a hard one. I feel like I've been hearing and seeing more stuff that's kind of more Mediterranean and maybe even like Middle Eastern, Persian type of direction, something that's like more kebabs and, kind of like crossing over in that area. Just because and also like, it's something else I've been seeing, and maybe this is because it's one of my clients, I've seen like, as far as smaller places, more like Caribbean and Jamaican food and things like that. So I feel like, there's always amazing Italian and Asian and American food and that type of stuff. But I feel like people are really getting excited about cuisines that we haven't seen as much, and then like having like some kind of twist on them. So that's where, I think Safi's it's been really successful, because it's like, it has the big kebabs and it has like a Middle Eastern and Israeli influence. And so, but it still has an American, touch to it. So it's these kind of like other cuisines that are, slightly Americanized or fusion, but just something different. I think people are always looking for something new and something different. And now we have such access to all these amazing flavors and chefs and people, people have all these ways of like smaller chefs, like actually getting to know or, kind of putting themselves out there. And so people actually know who they are and they get excited about it. And so it's been really fun seeing like a lot of smaller, or what are smaller chefs being able to have an audience and have a platform to have their cuisine being shared, as opposed to just kind of the standards of like steakhouse, Asian food, American food, that type of thing.
Okay, that's good. What about food trucks?
Oh, I'm so tired of food trucks. I've always been a little weird about them, but like, I think I'm ready for the good ones to stay and the rest of them to go away.
Oh, I'm like, I do not like food trucks. I mean, I think other people, other people know. I'll be like, what? It's like, if you're going to eat off of a food truck, it should be less and it should be quick. And I said, I do not want to pay $20 for a falafel at a food truck, and it takes 30 minutes from me.
I know.
And everyone's
Yeah.
standing there. It's
I just, I don't feel like it's ever better. It's like, oh, well, I guess it's convenient, but is it good? It's still, I'm sure they're out there.
I
I
don't
just
think it's
haven't.
ever better. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's go for the restaurant. We'll go to like employ Nicole.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And people more than, I don't know. I mean, there's the whole staff and kind of, it's also, but like what I love about restaurants is it's like there's also a sense of community around them, right? So if you have good food, good people, there's certain restaurants I go to, I know the waiters, they know me, and it's like, you have the food, you have the people, like and you run into people, like that's exciting. That's something that I think people crave, especially since we're all so isolated in a lot of ways with technology and everything. I think that, people really want that experience. They want to be able to go out and enjoy being out, not being in their living room. So, which, that has its place too, but just, we have to really, I think about if that's important to us, like, do we want to support that? Do we value that in our lives? And I think that if most people would say yes, and that they want to do that. So that's where I don't necessarily think food trucks they serve a purpose, but like, as far as a bigger solution for community or that kind of stuff, that's probably not the best answer.
I know. I think they just do it when they don't have right. We have like a lot of breweries, and so they don't have the licenses to have a kitchen, and so they've got the truck there. But then you have to like go out to the thing, stand in it, come back in. It drives me crazy. Okay, so on that note, what are your first recollections of experiencing architecture?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say that there's actually kind of three, just because I feel like there's been points in my career our life really, that have kind of changed architecture for me really completely. When I was growing up, my father was in the oil industry, and so we moved every couple of years, but usually it was just kind of just suburban areas with like strip malls and housing developments, and everything was fine, but I didn't know what architecture was. I had absolutely no idea. And then when I was in high school, I took a trip to Europe, and I went to like France and Germany and Austria, and it was absolutely amazing, right? I got to see all these cathedrals and city squares and promenades and all these places that really kind of like how the architecture shaped people's lives and their experiences. And then, but it wasn't just, stagnant. It was like, it's been, it started centuries ago and it still continues, right? Like it evolves with the people. And for me, that was like a really kind of like aha moment, like, oh yeah, that's what architecture is. I get it. And then
Where did you
there
grow
was kind
up
of like
then?
two other
Your dad, if he was in the oil industry,
yeah.
is it Texas or Oklahoma?
Mainly Texas. I was actually born in Wyoming, and then I moved to Ventura, California. And then I moved to Dallas, and then I moved to Houston, and then I moved to Austin, and then I moved to New Orleans, and then I moved back to Houston, and then I went to college in Austin. So, it was kind of like you're always moving, but in these oil centric areas. But then, I went to college, studied architecture, and then I interned with Will Bruder, who is an architect, and he's also an artist. He's a sculptor originally, but I think I really learned like that. Yeah. He's now in Oregon, but he was in Arizona when I worked for him. We were out in the middle of nowhere in New River, Arizona. It's kind of like us with a bunch of swamp.
Yeah, I'm actually licensed in Arizona, so I go over there. I go over there. Yeah.
But he really, I really learned that like space can you can sculpt space with like light and materials and form, and you can like really create like emotions and experience and guide people. Like that was, he was really about sculpting the space. And that's because I feel like, like you can do certain things with like light grazing the wall or like, certain things to make the spaces feel cozy or energized. But like the choices you make tell people how they're supposed to be there and how they're supposed to like respond and interact there. So that was kind of like, it was like another like kind of aha moment, I guess. And then, and I think later in my career, I really started working on larger scale projects and thinking more about like how the process like was also super important. Because it's like I feel like there's this thing like architecture is like is like beautiful buildings, and it is, but it's also like if the building doesn't work or doesn't, it can be amazing, but if it doesn't work, like it it's pointless. It's not pointless, but like it's just like it's not successful. So that's where I started
It is
really
pointless.
working
Yeah, I think
on
it is
like,
pointless.
yeah, yeah. But like yeah. So but like, I started working a lot in doing programming and visioning and working with people to really kind of rethink how they were working currently and being like, okay, well, what do you need? What do you need beyond desks and walls? Like, what kind of workflow, how can this space, how do you work with the client originally to kind of break out of those ideas of what they want and then into something of like, oh, well, actually what we need is to improve our workflow, or we need to have like more space, or we need to have like a big, whatever it is. And then working with them and then working with contractors and everybody else to make sure it's a successful project on not just the beautiful thing or the thing that is amazing at the end, but like it actually works. It improves their lives. It's hopefully on budget. It's like all these things that like, that's where at a certain point I was like, okay, actually I need to think way bigger picture, not just about the building. I need to think about everybody involved and how to actually make this work. And so I guess those are the three kind of points in my life where I was like, oh yeah, actually architecture is not what I thought. It's actually something a little different and something a little more sophisticated every time, right?
Yeah, though I think that you probably got something of that at Will Bruder's office. I mean, it wasn't like you were just at like, I don't know, Joe Blow's
Oh no.
office.
Oh no, I mean these things
yeah,
were always
yeah,
there. They were always
yeah.
there, but I think that like at certain points in my life I was a little bit more tapped into it, or like really involved in leading certain parts of the design and and part of the process that it's like it really kind of clicked and it really kind of, sunk in. I'm like, oh wow, like this is actually the piece that is super exciting to me, and I want to take that into my profession and ultimately now my office, like on, like make it part of who I am and who my company is,
Yeah,
as opposed to,
yeah, yeah.
just
And I
having
mean,
like,
I think so much of it is just, um, it's like people are always in such a hurry to do everything, and it's like, oh, let's hurry,
yeah,
hurry to do it. And, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, let's see if do you even need, it's like a lot of times, the homeowner will say, well, this is what I need, right? This is what I need, this, and I need that, and I want it this big. And I'm like, okay, like, but it's like, and people are always in such a hurry to get on with the process and submit it because things take so long in the building department. It's like, I never feel like I have enough time to like really explore all these things, which really it comes about, it's me about having to do projects on my own, right? That I am just the developer and and I'll be able to just work on these things on my own because there'll be, houses or something that I'm like doing because I'm exploring more because I have more time to be able to do that. And I'm not looking at somebody else kind of
yeah,
like going through that, just as far as, as far as being able to find either that or I'm like, how do you find the client that will, it's like, how do you find the client that is willing to let you explore those ideas?
yeah. I mean it doesn't always happen, don't get me wrong. I mean, but I think like at
Yeah.
least but I remember working with one client, and it was a public sector client, and
Yes.
they
Yeah,
came
of
to
course. Yeah.
they came to the company I was working for at the time, and they were like, we just want a kitchen sink. That was like their priority. And it's like, oh, okay, well, let's let's think a little bigger. And they're like, we don't need to. We just need like an office and we need a kitchen sink. And I'm like, okay, well, but they were game. Like once we were kind of like, oh, well, we had to like lead them along and have these discussions of like, well,
Yeah.
you have a kitchen sink, great, but like, let's talk about the space around it and like how are you going to work better with one person and so, but it was a process and, ultimately they got a lot more than a kitchen sink. And if we'd only given them a kitchen sink, they would have been really disappointed. Would have been way faster,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but I do
Yeah.
think like, no matter what, I think you have to try to ask the questions and like, if you're asking some of the right questions, people will respond and be like, huh, they'll give it. And if you have a client who's engaged and who's interested in trying to move things forward, usually they'll be like, at least like open for a conversation. Right.
Yeah.
And so then
Yeah.
it's kind of up to you to take advantage of that moment and be like, okay, so how do we take it from this one question and make in a meaningful way to the client? Like, you have to go back, like,
Yeah.
okay, think about, okay, well, what do they not know is like their pinch points or, and some of that's just investigation and interviews and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Or coming
But
up with some conceptual idea that maybe they don't even know that's the conceptual idea behind the project, but it is
yeah,
for
mhm,
you, it is for
yeah,
you. And so you're using that regardless of whether they know like what that concept is or not.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And who worked on well, because you do community centers, right? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, over the course of my career, I've done like single family residential. I've done a little bit of everything, right?
Mhm.
And I think that what the theme with all of them is that they've been kind of more about, I really gravitate towards more complex building types and just, like just something that has like a extra layer of complexity that I just, kind of really get into. But I think really what I'm personally interested in is spaces that are like gathering spaces, like bringing
Uh-huh.
people together, whether it's a community center or a restaurant or whatever else it is. It's just something that is not just a thing of beauty, but something. I mean, I want to incorporate design uh, community, the sensitivity to the people using it, but just somehow bringing people together is super important to me. And that's something I see, especially as we're so tapped into our devices and our phones and working from home. Like it just, to me, it's so much more, it's even more important. Like it's kind of
Mhm.
like a key part of humanity and
Mhm.
civilization. And it's kind of this push and pull of like, and how do you make that better than somebody just being on their phone, or or or, or being on Zoom. So it's interesting. It's always interesting.
Oh, well, and your husband will tell you it's easier to like control the audio with things on Zoom than it is if you're in person trying to do it on mine. Like I'll just do it on voice memo, which doesn't always end up being like the best. Like you can control it better on Zoom
Oh,
or one of the other like apps for podcast, like Riverside. Riverside is another app that people use for podcasting that's more like complicated and gets into the whole thing.
yeah.
So what three classic buildings do you like and why?
That's a hard question because there's so many. But I guess the
That's why I have
three.
three, but
I,
yeah, you can do more. I mean, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think that the three buildings, at least right now, that come to mind. The first one is the Sagrada Familia, because I think that Gaudi really reimagined the cathedral and took something that is like a cornerstone of community and turned it into something that's really like, I find it really welcoming and dynamic. And even it's still in process, right? But it's
Mhm.
like the fact that it's been being built for so many years, over 100 years now, and people are still going there, they're gathering there, they're excited about it. It still feels new. Um, and I also think because it's such a interesting place and so dynamic that like, and it's such a break in tradition, like it actually is still makes it more inviting to people who aren't just Christian. Like everybody wants to see it. They want to be part of it. They want to
Yeah.
enjoy the sculpture of it. And so that one, as I said, it's not done yet, but
Yeah.
I love the evolution of it, and I think it's amazing. I think the second one is the Peter Zumthor's Thermal Baths at Valls.
Okay.
And I think that it really kind of feels like it's carved out of a mountain, and it really he uses like materials and light to create this really rich experience, and that shows people how they're going to experience the space and brings them through the space. It's kind of the opposite of the Sagrada Familia in some ways, but it's still bringing people together, but kind of more of in an individual and introspective setting, but in a shared
I was going to
space,
say,
So it's still like a gathering space, but it is still like showing you like kind of how you're supposed to feel, and it's a really rich experience, but it's a shared space that's very individual, which I think is super interesting. And then definitely not classic architecture, but I think that the third one that comes to mind right now, which I never thought I would even say this when I was visiting the space, is that the fire station by Zaha Hadid at the Vitra campus. It is. I don't know.
Is that not classic? That's classic, I think.
I mean, classically Zaha Hadid.
No, I know. Yeah, when I say classic, I don't mean classical. I mean classic, like it's for like David Hertz said, "Oh, iconic," and I'm like, "Yeah,
yes, I will definitely iconic." Yeah. So, but what was so interesting about it, because they don't use it as a fire station anymore.
They
but
don't.
Like, there's
what do they use it as?
It's more of a museum piece at this point.
Okay.
But it was originally as a fire station. And I think for me, walking through it, like there's all these like forced perspectives and these geometries of the space that, at parts I was kind of dizzy. I was uncomfortable. I was, but it really made me think like, oh my God, like I always thought a fire station would be this like, brick building with a big fire truck in front. And but this was a functioning fire station forever. But it really made me kind of rethink like, oh, like a fire station doesn't have to be that traditional thing. It can be something completely different, and one that makes me dizzy as I walk through. So it was so interesting. It's like one of those things that I was like, I don't know if I liked that building, but I found it like fascinating when I was done going through it.
It's nice that you picked up a building by a woman, because I was like thinking, I'm like, not that many people pick any buildings by women. I mean, you'll get like Hearst Castle or whatever. People say, oh, Hearst Castle, because that's in California.
I was going to say, actually, Hearst Castle.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, Hearst Castle. Yeah. Even though she did a million other buildings. I mean, she was the most, Mark Appleton was saying, she was more prolific than Frank Lloyd Wright, and she lived for less time. Totally. So as far as how many buildings she did and how many, in that amount of time. But yeah, I mean, it's always, I think it's nice. Yeah. So I don't think there's that many people that have ever said anything about Zaha. I'm like trying to think, there've been like 77, like the 70s.
Well, I mean, like look at her body of work is amazing. I mean, I don't know. She really did amazing work. And I think it should be talked about more, honestly. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. But yeah, you're right. There's not that many women who have been acknowledged or given as many opportunities. I think even though they have equal, if not more interesting talent than a lot of other men. But I guess just kind of going back to the three.
Jeannie Gang. Some people have mentioned Jeannie Gangs. Yeah, but those are skyscrapers, right? So it's like, but even then, I mean, it's typically they'll give like a classic kind of, skyscraper, even though the woman that was with SOM, what was her name? Like in the 50s or whatever. She was,
I'm not sure.
I think she was a divorced mom actually. And she was like, did a bunch of work for SOM, but nobody ever thinks that nobody like knows that she's the one that did.
Yeah.
Like, did she do the Seagram building or something? I think maybe she was, maybe she was the one that she was at UT Austin. I'm pretty sure she was a professor at UT Austin, like a long time. Like she was one of the first women professors at UT Austin, I'm pretty sure.
I
She
should know
wasn't
that
from there.
then. I'm not sure because
No.
I went to UT Austin.
No, you did. I know you did. I don't think you remember anything, right? I mean, I probably can remember all the women. I can remember all the women architect professors that I have, but there were many that I did not have. And so I don't remember. I mean, I can't. I mean, Ming Feng was one of the professors when I went to school, but I never had her as a professor. She only taught one class, and that was in fifth year. And it was one of the studios. It was the interior studio that they had her teaching, not
Of
even though she
course,
did
right?
have, yeah, of course,
Yeah.
right.
Not that there's anything wrong with teaching that. It's just that that is the female portion that she should be teaching, right?
And I mean, Sigrid Poland was one of it, and she's a professor like back east now. She was out, and she actually did like several houses in Riverside that are modern, but they were in Riverside, so there's not that many. But or people don't know that, and they're private houses, somewhere, so it's like not so much. Yeah, but yeah. Yeah, so that's good. So which one, what was the name of the fire station?
Oh, I think it's just called the fire station at the Vitra campus by Zaha Hadid.
Vitra. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's on this campus full of other architectural, significant buildings.
Yeah.
It is a really fantastic place to go visit. But that was the one that really stuck with me, even though there's so many amazing things there. But I think that one stood out to me. And it was just funny because I remember leaving and my husband was like, "Oh my God, I feel nauseous." I'm like, "Yeah, but okay." Like, it really I'm like, I feel the same way, but as I said, it really stuck with me. I didn't expect that. And it's that unexpected and kind of unique experience that I feel like I didn't think going to a firehouse that I was going to feel that way. And I was like, oh my God, that's really powerful. Architecture can do all these things.
Yeah. I know I went to the Cincinnati Museum of Art, and it was, I couldn't go in because they were closed, but I could go into the lobby space and everything and walk. And then I went down the one stairs and I was taking photographs, and the security guard said, he goes, "Oh yeah, that's always a good place to watch people after they've had a glass of wine," because they also would when they were going down, right? Because the steps are skewed. We actually have these steps over here in the park. It's the same thing because we run them, and you really have to be careful when you're running down because they're skewed, right? So you're running straight, but the steps are like this. And I think, right, are those the other? Yeah, they're like that too. Yeah. So what do you like about being an architect?
Well, I think that I love the process of architecture. I love working with clients and engineers and contractors, and just I like just kind of working with them in the whole process of trying to, because I feel like it's this journey, right? And as I said, I love the buildings that we do. And I love that they're there and improving people's lives, but just that the act of starting with an idea and saying okay, well, let's see what else we can do with this. Can we do it better? Can we do it smarter? And I feel like I've been so lucky to work on these teams with amazing engineers, amazing clients, that it's really everybody has a contribution. And if it goes really well and people are engaged and active and a participant, there's this creative moment that is going through the whole thing that at the end it's one part of the process, and then it's kind of it's your baby that you kind of give up, but at the same time it's just this I love that whole process where you're working through the challenges, and whether it's a restaurant, a community center, a house, some kind of other space, I just I feel like there's that kind of journey that you go on. And I do think that when I started NCA Studio, I really wanted to try to have a practice that was more, people centered, more, still design forward, but something that is, really about collaboration. Because I feel like a lot of times when I was working, there was always somebody who was they were the architect. They were the end all be all. We just care about the pictures at the end. I don't care about what else. And I kind of always felt like something was missing for me in those types of setups, that I'm like, well, but we have to make sure it works. If they can't afford it or don't like it afterwards, the pictures don't mean anything, And so, and I think that that's also kind of where like hospitality and gathering spaces really have been exciting for me because like, they're really challenging during the process, but there's a big reward. And then just like, that kind of really, you really have to be really smart, and you have to really be able to collaborate and work through a lot of problems, a lot of challenges to be able to get through it. And I think that, as I said, the rewards can be high, but there's definitely a journey that I find really exciting.
Trying to see if like the internet connection would be better if I just like clicked them. So, well, you worked for you worked for some really kind of design centric firms. And so I think that probably, I've always, I worked for some people in West LA, but, I think it was less about, well, one, I wanted to get paid. So that was one reason why.
Yeah.
Sure. For people that like actually paid. But, from that time, though, I think it still happens. But I think that also it was, but I did do some work for, I don't know when you worked for some of those offices. I worked for Gordon Pollon in like 1993, 94.
Yeah.
So I actually did the structural drawings for like some of those, for a lot of those firms, and a couple, the two that you mentioned before, I did the same, but, but yeah, I wonder if it's, and then I also worked for a woman, right? Because you're kind of like thinking, okay, is it because I'm working for men and not for women? And then, but I think that in architecture, it almost, sometimes, sometimes it's just not being able to communicate your ideas to your employees, or it's hard. Like I don't have anybody working for me, and then when I do have like maybe a consultant do some work stuff, it's like oh, it's just and it does add time to especially when you're not used to delegating. It's going to take time in order to kind of develop a relationship with somebody where they're going to be able to understand a lot of things. And I think I can do that. I think I've always been able to like do what people tell me to do. Me telling other people that have worked for me, I don't think that I do as good a job with that, and it's also because they're not, but I definitely, now I'm like kind of thinking, and I'm like, if I want to do more of these things, more exploration into the concepts and be able to have the time to do that, I am going to be able to I'm going to have to find somebody that's going to be able to do a lot of this other stuff that I don't have time to do, that's cluttering up the things that I don't, that I don't really want to do.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, that is 100%.
I don't want to do plan check corrections. I don't want to do billing.
I'd be worried if you did.
Pardon me?
I said I'd be worried if you did want to.
I actually know. I just had this conversation because I have somebody that's like doing it, and they're in the industry that does all these plan check corrections. So they were like super, and I was just like, oh my God, I hate this, and he was like, well, I actually find it kind of, and I'm like, well, yeah, you would, hopefully you would, because it's your job, it's like, so hopefully that's because otherwise you would probably really hate your job, you'd hate your job as much as I hate your job.
Yeah. Well, luckily I have some great staff who is does a good job, but it is hard. You have to it's hard to communicate, especially at all levels. I think that's the number one challenge of our industry, right? Is communicating. And whether it's a design ideas or business ideas or how you want people to react or whatever, it's a skill that you have to really work on, and it's hard. It's like I try to I try to work with staff and also try to be like, hey, this is how you should phrase things, or, you really just need to call them. Like, it's like another email is not going to get you there. You just need to call. And like, so there's just, it's like all these things that I'm trying to like, and, like, teach them, like, it's a huge part of the job. And I see some junior architects that if they can communicate, they can excel like so fast, just because like, the way that they can interact with people is just, it's amazing. So no, it's definitely, it's a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. And plus, I mean, I like have, you kind of talk about millennials or Gen Z or whatever it is. But I mean, I have three kids, that are adults,
Mhm.
right? They're 24, 26, and 30. And so it's like, I know that, sometimes they're like, oh, well, da 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 da, like you, blah, 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 and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And so I keep like thinking in my mind that, that people are gonna immediately know that I'm talking what I'm doing, or at least have the faith, right? Like at least like not if I'm going to ask you to do something, like please do it. I mean, and if you're not going to do it, then let me know. Or if you need help doing it, then let me know about that. Or if you don't understand something, then tell me that you don't understand it. Like, I'm all about like, hey, if you don't, I said, just ask them. Right. So it's like kind of like the whole mentoring, when I say like mentoring, I'm like, well, I feel that my mentors were the people that I worked for. Like those were my mentors. Yeah. And that's kind of it, so kind of to be like, there's this other, there's mentorship or whatever. And I'm like, well, what else, it's like, I mean, I don't know. I laugh. I'm like, maybe I need a mentor, but they would have to be like 75 or something.
But I do think like, after you've been working in a profession or just as a person, at a certain point, you're like, okay, you know what? I don't want to beat around the bush. Like the best way to get the result is to tell a person what I'm looking for. Like, okay, I don't like this thing. Well, hey, I need to tell you, I don't like this thing. And it's not about feelings.
Yeah.
Like it's about, let's figure out, we don't like it. How do we improve it? And like, just don't beat around the bush, let's like, and I'm like, I feel the same way. You don't like what I'm doing. You don't like what's happening on a project. I would much rather you tell me so I can fix it or change it or whatever. But it doesn't, it can be a constructive conversation. But I feel like that is a skill that is definitely doesn't come easy to a lot of people.
Yeah. And I am just more kind of like forward focused or whatever, just kind of like saying like, oh, like that. But I mean, there's a lot of people that I don't know that aren't, I guess. But so what do you want to say about the future of architecture?
I mean, personally, I'm really excited and kind of hopeful about where things can go, because I mean, there's so much technology coming out, and I hear a lot of people who are really like hesitant about it, and some levels I am, but I'm really excited about getting rid of all the mundane stuff that I have to do, and like hopefully, like, all the little, I just remember when I was a younger architect, we'd spend like all night like trying to get the printer ink right, to print something out. Now it's just like everything's on the screen, like what it's going to look, or generally what it's going to look like. But there's all these other technologies that are like getting rid of some of all the mundane stuff that we've had to do. And so I think there's an amazing opportunity, or things happening in the future where we can think about like, oh, well, how can we focus on creative problem solving and three-dimensional problem solving and doing the things that architects do best, which is like, figuring out things for like, ways things can work, or ways that they can look, or, not just a solution for one person, but for entire communities and systems. So I think that's super exciting. And then I'm really cautiously optimistic about LA right now, because it's with the fires and climate change and housing and the Olympics. I think it's a real opportunity for us to rebuild with intention, and like try to figure out like, okay, so what do we want to build that we can still be really proud and want to live in and call home. And I feel like there's a lot of interesting conversations. I'm optimistic that there's going to be positive things that come out of it, so that, hopefully we can build things that are more resilient, and, like, that aren't just a bunch of stucco boxes, but are like communities that are actually going to be able to withstand, the effects of climate change, and support the creativity that is so inherent in Los Angeles.
Do you have any,
and then,
hospitality projects that you're doing for fire rebuilds or?
No, I mean, most of the stuff that I really hear about right now is focused on housing. And I think that people are just kind of starting to talk about kind of more commercial areas, because I think that and understandably, the priority has been to get people into homes, right? But that's still like, a year, sometimes, maybe longer away right now, just because of everything that has to happen before then. But really, like, at the same time as the conversation on housing, like, we have to be talking about rebuilding the community hubs that were destroyed, because it's like right now there's like some places that there's restaurants and now there's no houses to go to them anymore. Or, there might be some houses that are left, but there's no grocery stores or no, support for them. So, like, it's really something that we have to rebuild those things together. But I feel like, at least on most of the discussions that I've been part of and hearing, like, the focus is still right now, it's still so new. I mean, it's April. This happened in January. People are talking about it, but they're still like kind of trying to figure out, what the playing field is, right? Because it's evolving so much, so quickly.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, I get it. Like, people want to get back in their home. I mean, I have a client that's a fire rebuild, she wants to get back in her home, and it's like, we're going to build a little bit different than what it was. But like, I'm told, I mean, it's like the street probably has maybe 20 homes on it.
Yeah.
And there's already people, I think there's 2 people that already have permits. This is
They're one of the few. Oh yeah, because I think Altadena, like,
yeah.
I think, like, I heard something like 2 weeks ago they had 75 permits in Altadena, and then I think 2 weeks ago they had their first LA permit, and that's where it's like, the as is, like, basically like for like, and
I know,
and it's one of those things. It's really challenging because it's like, yes, I of course want to get people back in their homes, but like, some of the stuff you're like, should we really rebuild in exactly the same way? But it's like, that's a hard conversation to have, and it really has to happen. That it's very complex, and
yeah. And I've like come up with a process that I'm like, I would like to do it this way. It's like, because that, again, like, this is the process that I want to use. Like, instead of like rushing to kind of like come up with something that's brand new, I want to like get what was there and then start to take it apart and rebuild it the way. But it's like, for my, I just said, like, for myself, I want to rebuild what was there as far as the plans and elevations, and then start to like take everything apart. So it'll be like kind of the same way as when I do an addition remodel with some, right? First, you're going to do the existing as-built drawings and then do it. And people are like, well, that's because it's already there or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but still, like, for my process, that's kind of what I want. That's kind of what I want to do, to kind of, because like, let's see what did work and what didn't work, because right now it's just, I can't even see what was there before. Right. So like, let's see. And then like, then kind of say like, okay, like, what was this too small? Was this big? Because right now it's just, we just have the inspection sketch. Right. And I've been to the site, but there's kind of like nothing that, I know one of the, I went to see the Craig Elwood house in Malibu, probably at the end of November. And my one of the product reps and I were, and she said, oh, where do you want to go to lunch? And I said, oh, let's go. Like, I said, oh, I can't think of like where to go to lunch. And then we were driving down. I'm like, oh, let's go to the Real Inn. I said, have you ever been to the Real Inn before? And she's like, no. And I said, yeah, I said, I haven't gone there for years. And that was literally going to be like the first time that I'd been there for a long time. And then the last time, right, that I was ever going to have eaten there. And do you think that they're going to rebuild, or have you heard anything about it through the?
Well, I haven't heard anything specifically about the Real Inn, but it's so expensive to rebuild. I mean, I just like, I think, I don't know how, smaller restaurants and stuff like that are going to be able to do that. I just,
Mhm.
they don't, it's going to have to be, I think it's going to have to be developers who, and then they might find a spot in a development somewhere. But most like independent restaurants, like they just don't have the money or the investment to be able to build a new building in the coastal areas. So, I mean, when the Real Inn was originally built, it was a lot easier and no regulations probably. I mean, some, but not that many. And that was
I
part of
would
its
agree with you
charm,
on
right?
that, but yeah, agree with you on that. I was just thinking that it would be a wonderful opportunity if you could do it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing, but I think the economics of it is something that is really hard for
Uh,
small businesses, right? And I mean, even though I know the Real Inn was a successful business, I can't imagine that they have like, I mean, what is it going to cost to rebuild in that area? What, $1,000 a square foot? I mean, those are the numbers that I'm hearing right now, and I can't imagine that they have just, and especially after if you lose a business and then you have to, how do you make it through the time that when the business is lost, you've lost your employees, it's very hard. So I think that it's going to have to be, somebody who's doing developments that are smart, that are, like somehow factored into the fabric of the community. And then they have to try to bring in, businesses that are really community oriented and local, right? I mean, I think that this
mhm.
also, as far as restaurants go, that's also kind of a trend in restaurants is that people really like they don't want to feel like it's like just like this cookie cutter international chain that has no ties to the community. I think people
Yeah,
really
yeah,
do want spaces that feel authentic and that are still part of their locale and are sustainable and somehow relate to them as opposed to
uh-huh.
just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
impersonal. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, was there anything else that you want to say about the future of architecture?
I mean, I think the last thing would just be that it's kind of more on a personal note is that I think I'm I really look forward to being an architect mid-career that there's so many opportunities in my community that maybe I can take part more in more leadership and just mentorship and because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that I'm definitely involved in as far as women's architecture groups or different community groups and things like that. But just it's really it's fun to finally be at a point in my career where like I have enough experience that I can be like, hey, yeah, I can really contribute on like a city level, on like a personal level, on whether it's with the AIA or the local community groups, and so I think as all these things are happening in LA and all these things are happening with AI and technology, I don't know. I just think that there really is opportunity for architects to really take steps in leadership and try to lead the discussions in smart ways and try to, put forth things that we have to contribute. And then also like to try to mentor the next generation of architects because, showing them that there's a lot of great possibilities in architecture and that, sometimes people need like sometimes I feel like it's really important to have somebody who can show you that architecture isn't just like about drawing stair details for like 10 years or whatever it is that you end up doing as a young architect, right? That you have to learn skills, but there's so many amazing things about it that are out there that it's not just A plus B equals C, like walls plus roof equals beautiful building. There's a lot to it that um, can contribute to communities and people's lives.
Okay, all right, go do it.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. It's been great talking with
All
you.
right, thank you. I'm gonna stop the tape and then.
Okay.